So you hear about places like Dhaka, right? And the image that often comes to mind is, well, maybe overwhelming density, maybe challenges, perhaps even a bit of chaos.
That's a common perception.
But what if there's, more to it? What if beneath all that, there's this city just buzzing with unexpected charm, incredible food, real warmth, and a history that's, well, deeper than you might think?
Exactly. And that's what we're digging into today.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh. We've got a stack of your sources here, some Wikipedia bits on culture and history, a really interesting journal article about its past and present, and some transcripts from YouTube videos, too, capturing those real on-the-ground feelings.
Yeah, the goal here is to get past those surface impressions. We want to pull out the key insights, those surprising details from the material, and really try to understand what makes Dhaka, well, Dhaka, this huge, complex, and pretty unique megacity.
Okay, then, let's unpack this.
Right. So stepping into Dhaka, the first thing the sources really convey is the intensity. It's just a full-on sensory experience.
In a good way, though.
Mostly, yeah. You've got this incredible density, over 22 million people? Makes it one of the biggest, most packed cities globally.
Yeah.
You definitely feel that energy.
Wow.
But what's fascinating is how, amidst all that intensity, you find this incredibly rich, vibrant daily life.
And the food seems like a great way into that.
Yeah.
The sources talk about the difference between, say, home cooking.
Yeah, the staples, rice, curry, dalhai, maybe roti or parota.
And then the explosion of stuff you find out and about in restaurants and on the street.
Oh, absolutely. They mentioned restaurant favorites, things like kachi biryani, chicken biryani, tahari, pulao, the classics. But the street food, that's where you really feel the pulse. Things like fuchka, shalmuri, shingara, samosa, snacks everywhere.
And drinks, too, like borhani and lachi.
Exactly. Those seem pretty central.
There was this one really lovely story in the sources about someone visiting a home during Ramadan.
Oh, I remember that one.
It painted such a vivid picture, didn't it? The kitchen as the absolute heart of everything, this raduni, the expert cook making special dishes like nargisi kebab.
Yeah, the potato-wrapped egg thing.
Yeah.
And beef tahari. But it wasn't just about the food itself, was it?
No, not at all. It was the hospitality, that feeling of being welcomed, genuinely made to feel at home, even as a visitor. It really pushes back against the idea of a huge city being cold or impersonal.
Totally. And it's interesting, right alongside that deep-rooted home cooking and street food culture, the sources also point out all the global chains. KFC, Pizza Hut, Starbucks, Burger King, they're all there.
Yeah, it shows how plugged in Dhaka is globally, even down to, what's for lunch.
And that mix local tradition, global trends, carries through to shopping and even how people dress. Markets and malls are apparently everywhere.
And not just small ones. Jamuna Future Park gets mentioned as being, ridiculously huge. One source says 12th biggest globally, another says biggest in South Asia.
Yeah, the exact rank doesn't matter as much as the sheer scale of it. Modern retail on a massive level. But then you also have places like Burke.
Lalbagh Bazar, described as this enormous hawker's market.
Right, and the source talking about the intensity there of vendors literally shouting to get attention.
Huh. And finding clothes super cheap, which makes sense. Bangladesh being what, the second biggest garment exporter globally?
Level with India, just behind China.
Yeah.
And navigating those places, you see these little details of daily life. Metal cages on rickshaw lights. For protection, apparently.
Weird.
Or that really striking image someone shared, seeing people just openly exchanging huge wads of cash right there on the street market.
Wow. That speaks volumes about how the economy works, huh? Formal, informal, all mixed up.
Definitely. And the sensory overload isn't just sound. The smells in the food markets. Spices, maybe live animals, flies. It's intense. One person even mentioned chili markets that literally make you cough.
Sounds like you need all your senses firing.
You really do.
Yeah.
And beyond the markets, just the streets themselves are something else. That famous crazy, crazy traffic.
Gridlock, right, where walking is faster.
Often, yeah. And the visual side, all those thousands of electrical wires just hanging everywhere, it's a distinct look.
But then amidst that, you get these really specific, almost surreal details, like car parts shops and seatbelt vendors just on the pavement.
Exactly. Or that incredible image of men carrying these unbelievable loads, like 100 kilos on their heads, from boats to markets, just passing the load along a human chain.
That's staggering. It says so much about the physical effort involved in just, keeping the city supplied.
It really does. And getting through crowds isn't just nudging past. It's squeezing, sometimes even climbing over things, apparently.
And yet you might look up and see something totally different, like pet pigeons people keep on their rooftops, little moments of normalcy amidst the intensity.
Which brings us to the big question.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How does a city with this level of intensity, these almost unbelievable street scenes, this complex daily life, how does it even function?
Well, a big part of the answer lies in its history, which is way more layered than you might think. Dhaka feels modern, a megacity, but the sources really push back against a simple origin story.
Right. It's not just the Mughals, is it? Evidence points way back, for 500 BC even.
Some evidence suggests settlements that old, and certainly things like the Dhakeshwari Temple from the 12th century show there was a significant community here long before the Mughals arrived.
That's fascinating. So it wasn't just some small village they took over.
Not at all. And one source mentioned something amazing. Dhaka's textiles showing up in Mediterranean trade way back in 73 AD.
73 AD?
Yeah, and being on the Silk Road, attracting traders from all over Eurasia. It was already a hub, a revenue center, a military spot, with mosques being built in the 1400s, well before the Mughals made it the capital.
But the Mughal era definitely kicked things up a notch when they moved the capital there in 1608, renaming it Jahangirnagar.
That's when it really exploded. Capital of Mughal Bengal. And basically the commercial and financial heart of Mughal India. Its strategic river port was already active too.
And that period under Shaista Khan in the mid to late 1600s sounds like a golden age. Population maybe hitting 1 million, lots of building.
Yeah, huge expansion. Construction of places like Chodokatra, various mosques, tombs, work on Lalbagh Fort. It was booming.
And travelers noticed, that guy Manucci mentioned the big population, lots of straw houses, but also the booming textile trade.
Right. And Tavernier calling Shaista Khan the cleverest man gives you a sense of the power and administration centered there.
It also drew in Europeans, didn't it? Armenians, Portuguese, French, Dutch, British.
Absolutely. All setting up trading posts or factories. You still see traces, like the Armenian church in Armanatolo or a Shankhari Bazar named after the Portuguese, even though those specific communities mostly faded later on.
So it was a proper global crossroads. But then the British arrived.
And things shifted. After 1757, with the capital eventually moving away under the British, Dhaka's importance actually dipped for a while. Population dropped significantly.
But it came back.
Yeah, there was a revival in the mid-19th century. New institutions like Dhaka College, horse carriages introduced, and the rise of the Dhaka Nawab estate, based at Ahsan Manzil, which used to be a French trading post. Interestingly, they became major players in regional politics, even under the British.
Then came partition in 47. Dhaka becomes the capital of East Bengal, part of Pakistan.
Which triggered massive changes. Huge population growth from migration, but also, sadly, communal violence.
And it became a real center for political movements.
Definitely. Especially the Bengali language movement, resisting the imposition of Urdu. That led to protests, martial law, a really charged period, but also new developments like the New Market area.
And finally, 1971. Independence. Dhaka becomes the capital of Bangladesh.
Facing enormous challenges of first humanitarian crises, political instability, but then entering this era of massive population growth and a huge real estate boom, creating the sprawling city we see today, hosting big international events too.
No, it's really interesting here, touching on what you said about the history. One source brings up this idea of an obfuscation of the pre-Mughal past.
Yeah, the perspective that some historians tend to focus maybe too much on the Mughal origin story, potentially downplaying or ignoring that deeper, earlier history.
It's a fascinating thought that what isn't told, the knowledge gap itself, can shape how a city understands its own identity.
Absolutely. It's about how history gets written and remembered, but that deep history is still physically there, especially in Old Dhaka. You've got like over 2,000 buildings from the 16th to 19th centuries.
Wow. Places like Lalbagh Fort, Ahsan Manzil, the Star Mosque, Dhakeshwari Temple. They're tangible links to those different eras.
Exactly. And historic areas like Armanatolo or Farashganj.
Which brings us more towards the present day, and the sources talk a lot about the people. Their energy, their resilience, how they navigate this incredibly dense, fast-changing place.
And a massive driver of recent change, since the late 80s really, has been the ready-made garments industry.
Right. It echoes that ancient textile trade, but on a completely different industrial scale. Global outsourcing.
Huge impact. Economically, it's the engine like, 3/4 of the country's exports. But the sources really stress the social impact.
Especially for women, right? Mass employment opportunities that just weren't there before.
Exactly. Helping create this whole new culture of economic independence, which is transforming society in profound ways.
And for many arriving from rural areas, Dhaka is this arrival city.
Yeah, a place people come seeking any opportunity,
Mhm.
often living on the margins, relying on what the sources call survival entrepreneurship, just finding ways to make ends meet, incredibly resourceful.
Which must contribute to those striking contrasts you see. Makeshift bamboo housing near high-end clubs, heavy industry next to universities.
It's visually jarring sometimes. And one source mentioned this really interesting paradox.
The dystopian cramming versus Jane Jacobs vibes.
Exactly. Seeing these incredibly dense apartment blocks, but then finding within some of them, like a place called Lake City, Concord, was mentioned these real community feelings. Ground floor shops, kids playing, pedestrian paths, that lively street-level interaction you might think density would kill.
It really challenges assumptions, doesn't it?
Totally. And then you get those moments of pure surrealism, like the person seeing a white horse on a pickup truck at night.
Huh. Yeah, the city as a stage for dramas without clear plots captures that unpredictable feeling.
But amidst all the challenges and strangeness, the cultural pulse is strong. All those festivals, Eid, Durga Puja, Bengali New Year, they're celebrated widely.
And there are key cultural spots, museums, parks like Ramna Park. Balda Garden, gotta mention too, as a place for peace and quiet.
Finding pockets of calm in the chaos. And the city is definitely modernizing too. You see neighborhoods like Gulshan with the high-rises, modern restaurants.
And the new metro, started just recently, December 2022, described as looking impressive, like metro systems anywhere else.
Yeah, a big step. But maybe the most consistent theme coming through all the sources, above everything else, is the people.
Their spirit, yeah. The warmth, the kindness, the hospitality seems to come up again and again.
Overwhelmingly so. And the energy, particularly the youth.
Those anecdotes feeling welcomed, being invited for iftar by strangers, they paint a picture so different from just, headlines about density or challenges.
There's definitely a feeling from some locals quoted that they feel misjudged by the outside world, that the focus is always on the negative stuff.
Which leads back to that advice in one source.
Right. Don't just rely on the negative press. The suggestion is if you really want to understand Dhaka, you have to go. Experience it yourself. Engage with people.
So wrapping this up, our deep dive into these sources really paints Dhaka as, well, far more layered and complex than the usual soundbites suggest. We've touched on that intense sensory daily life, the incredibly deep and sometimes debated history, and this present moment defined by just staggering growth, sharp contrasts, but also this remarkably resilient and hospitable population navigating it all.
With incredible energy. It
Yeah.
really defies easy labels.
We've seen how its past is both ancient and argued over, how its present involves this unparalleled density mixed with surprising community, and how the people manage it all with such warmth. It makes you wonder, what does Dhaka's story tell us about what allows culture and community to thrive, even in the most crowded, seemingly toughest environments in the world?
That's the question, isn't it?
So what does this all mean? For you listening, maybe it's just a fresh perspective on urban life, maybe it sparks a curiosity to find out more, or maybe just some surprising things to think about next time Dhaka comes up. A city truly unlike any other.